Good afternoon and welcome to this first attempt at Swinton Heritage Television, Swinton's own TV channel, if I can call it that, via the wonders of Facebook. I hope this is working and you can actually see me and not the other side of the phone. I'm stood at Chapel Hill in Swinton, right at the very heart of what was the old village. The site that I'm standing on is actually the site of a farm that was owned by the Sharpley family. Prior to that, however, Chapel Hill was noted that it did have a medieval inn, one of Swinton's first pub. So actually, I wish I could visit a pub today, but there we go, maybe soon. But the reason I'm at Chapel Hill is because I want to talk about Swinton's town cross. Swinton's very lucky to have a cross of this shape and form. Many towns and villages would wish they could have something restored like this. The story of why we would have a cross in the first place, when the monks came down from the great monasteries of the northeast. They were the followers of St. Cuthbert, the patron saint of Northumbria, whose tomb is in the magnificent cathedral at Durham. The disciples of Cuthbert came down from monasteries such as Lindisfarne, and they spread the word of the gospel to communities like Swinton. And when they came and spoke, they didn't have churches. There were no churches or chapels in those days. They would speak in the open air. And from time to time, the monks would come and they'd preach to the people. And so what the people then did, they would put at the point of the sermon or gospel a wooden cross originally. So they would park a wooden cross, then eventually they replaced those with a stone cross. Again, in the open air, there were no churches, so Swinton's original town cross would have been for that purpose. Now I'm going to show you a map here, but this map probably dates from around 1870s, and I'll do my best to show on this map. I'm going to put my finger. Now, the original site of the cross would have been somewhere over there at the junction of Milton Street and Church Street. So, if you like, right in the middle of the road. So that was the original site of the cross. One of the reasons why we have markets around crosses in various towns, where it was a place where you did a trade, you did a bargain, and it was almost like making a promise between the seller and the buyer. And if we made a promise in front of the cross, that gives that promise more gravity, more honour, and also someone's watching in on that promise. So that's why we tend to get market crosses, markets built around crosses for that very, very reason. So afterwards, when the churches came along, the churches and castles, the crosses would remain in the community, but obviously services moved inside. Now, Swinton didn't get actually its own church until 1817. And until that time, all Swinton had was a very small chapel, built sometime in the 12th century, and it was funded by the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. So again, back to Chapel Hill, the land I'm standing on once belonged to the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, and they built their small chapel on the site of this building here, which is now a nursery, but was formerly the church hall of St. Margaret's Parish Church, built in 1913. And now, as it's now used as a nursery. Sadly, at the moment, it's closed. But that was where the first place of worship of Swinton was at that very site. Now, so the town cross lost its... most crosses were actually destroyed. And you can see examples of this like in the village of Braithwell, where you've got just a cross that's a stump. And also there's a road in Wath called Stump Cross Road, which indicates there was also a cross there. And what they did in times of what was called Iconoclasm, they got rid of images inside of churches. They knocked the top, literally smashed the top off of these village crosses, because they wanted to sort of bring back a pure, plain religion. So they painted the wonderful medieval paintings that were in churches, they whitewashed them, and got rid of them. And that very same thing happened to Swinton's own town cross. So for many years, it just looked... It just looked like a shaft with a stump on it, literally like the stump cross road that I mentioned. So back to the, but talking about the construction of the cross, if you can, now that base stone is actually limestone. It's not local stone. That limestone base would have been brought by horse and cart at considerable effort from some distance away, maybe from the South Yorkshire magnesium limestone belt, to actually create the base for the cross. So that indicates the status of this structure. The second element of the cross, we actually think may be an upturned font even. So we're not quite certain of the significance of that. But the remainder of the cross is a more modern construction. And we got the restoration of this cross through a bid put forward through Swinton Community Partnership at that time. And we funded the restoration of the town cross at that time. So we're very fortunate that we do have this link with the past. Now, it took quite a bit of persuading to people like English Heritage to actually allow us to move the cross. But it was explained to them that actually this cross has been moved before, because originally it would have stood somewhere up behind me in the middle of the main road. Well, we couldn't restore it back there. And then when it was first moved, it was moved by a member of the Bramold family, who actually saved the remains of the Swinton Chapel of Ease. Remember the 12th century Norman chapel that I spoke about? And I don't know if you can see this, but the stump was moved to an area just to the northeast of St Margaret's Parish Church, and it sort of sat there until the 1950s. And then in the 1950s it was moved again to this site, which was by the west door of St Margaret's Church. Next section, and that's how it sort of sat there at the west door of St Margaret's Church until round about the project started in 2003. And then we actually got the completion of the project in 2004, and on this site it was a memorable day. We had a special service indicating 2003. So the story of Swinton's Town Cross, I hope you found that interesting. Quite appropriately, it sits on Chapel Hill, a historic part of the community. It's now moved 3 times, and hopefully it's gonna stay here. I'll just give you a little quick tour around it. You can see that the area is pretty well looked after. It's fenced, and indeed we have a plaque which tells you the story of how the town, or market cross, or butter cross even, found its new home in 2004. So I hope you found that interesting. If you want to tune in for some more Swinton Heritage videos, I'll hopefully be back on air at around about 4 o'clock for the next few days at another location. And if you want to know where I'll be tomorrow, you'll have to tune in. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.